there's just so much on the line, right? You're trying to build this business. You have a vision for where you want to take it, and then there's an opportunity to sell the business, and that's not an overnight thing. We did it pretty fast. I think we probably started talking to Movado within 70 to 80 days later, like the business was sold. But there's within that period, we're flying to New York and New Jersey, and they're coming to us, and we're having, hours of phone calls. Every week, it was tough.
Good morning. My name is Stephen Borelli, and you are tuned into the Sport of Business podcast. A few years ago, I started my business, Cuts Clothing, from my parents' basement in Washington. Leading a startup has its perks. One of them is connecting with like-minded individuals. On this podcast, you'll hear from some of the people I've gotten close with along the way. Get their takes on trends, business, and current events. And for future founders out there, hopefully you'll take something home that you can apply to your brand. This is the Sport of Business. Let's dive in. Welcome to episode 1 of For the Sport of Business podcast with my good friend and former CEO and founder of Movement Watches, Jake Kassan. $100 million exit, and he's here today to launch the pod. And one of my best friends. How you doing?
My guy. Glad to be here.
I know. I'm stoked.
Long time coming.
When we were thinking of launching this podcast, we were like, it was unanimously thought of, hey, we got to launch with Jake. One, you taught me a lot in the game, as well as a good friend and good camaraderie, lots of fun stories. So let's just get into it.
Love it.
So kind of starting off, we want to kind of get into just your story of how you founded Movement Watches and go and start with that.
Yeah. Basically started my entrepreneurial journey in high school. Always knew that the traditional school route wasn't for me, corporate route, and kind of had different e-commerce businesses just fell into my lap in high school and in college. And then leaving college, came up with the idea to start Movement and, looked to crowdfunding because I didn't know how to raise money or do anything like that. So we crowdfunded it. And I wasn't in school and college to spend a lot of time just focused on crowdfunding and e-commerce and Facebook and Twitter and all that shit. And first year we were able to do $1 million, never raise any capital, and kind of year after that did 7, then 30, then 50, all the way up to 75, 80. And then we sold in 2018 to Movado for $100 million. And then I stuck around with them for a while as well. So
That's beast. And I think what gets lost in that story is the time frame of which you did it. I always say Jake deserves a lot of respect, as people say, because he was really DDC 1.0. There really wasn't a big brother at the time of another brand where there was a playbook. I believe Movement was part of that initial playbook before all the brands you see today. What was it like starting and launching on the Kickstarter, and do you think that's still relevant for people today?
Yeah, back then it was great because you saw a lot of honestly shitty products go on to Kickstarter and get funded that clearly didn't. Coolest Cooler was one of them. I think did 12 million. I don't even know if that got out of initial production. Wow. So people just lost money because there's just products that they didn't know how to execute. So for us, we knew that, okay, we could get the money. The audience was there. But what we didn't know is just how to do everything afterwards. But we were able to produce the watches, found a reputable manufacturer, and then ran from there. In terms of today, if I was starting Movement today, it's obviously it's too saturated. But if I wanted to start a product today and needed capital, it's I don't know why you wouldn't potentially start on crowdfunding. It's not, I don't hear about it as much, and I don't know if there's a reason why it's not where I'm looking anymore. But I also think it's easier to get funding from angels. I think there's just more younger people with money, whether it's crypto or it's successful e-commerce entrepreneurs who are looking to invest. Maybe we're just in an LA bubble, but I know a lot of people who are getting angel money all around the United States, and
totally.
I've gotten DMs and have invested, and I've seen influencers are investing. I have friends that are on Bachelor and Bachelorette who are investing. So I feel like that's a route to go, if not the crowdfunding route.
Definitely. And what I love about crowdfunding is if you just launched a website, getting just your close immediate friends to buy within the first month would be hard because they would probably say, hey, I'll do it, but there wouldn't be a time bound urgency for them to actually press go and buy. So at the very least, Kickstarter or Indiegogo, like you did, will get people to buy and create urgency for them to buy. And, it's a good way to launch a product. Tell us the Indiegogo story of how you couldn't get on Kickstarter than when you're Indiegogo.
Yeah. So I'd spent a lot of time again, I had different e-commerce businesses and helped my business partner started a wallet company that did $100,000 on Kickstarter. And so I just studied Kickstarter. We knew Kickstarter in and out. We knew that if Movement got on Kickstarter, it would have been $1 million campaign. And at the time, Kickstarter had this ego to it that they only allowed, really innovative products.
Wow.
And which was kind of ridiculous. You had to kind of it was really a marketing play. There was this one sweatshirt that did $1 million that I can't even
remember that sweatshirt.
Yeah. And it was just the 10-year hoodie is what it was called. But it was shit. And it was just a marketing ploy. But when we tried to do watches, they denied us, and we rebutted, and they denied us again, and they wouldn't tell us why. And we were like, what do we do? We're basically screwed. And we knew about Indiegogo, but it's where crowdfunding projects went to die was on Indiegogo. It's just a graveyard.
Or the second campaign.
Yeah, exactly. It was just they're not legitimate. It's not going to work. But yeah, we went and did the exact same playbook, and I think because we had studied so much, we ended up doing. We had a 30-day campaign. We ended up doing $200,000 in 30 days.
That's beast.
And then we went to and then we relaunched another campaign just because we had more people who wanted to buy. But it was growth hacking. Just we were just doing stuff to boost ourselves up higher on the page. Just stuff that you do when you don't have any capital and you just have to be scrappy, as you guys know. So
I love it. I think too many people try to raise too fast and then they don't know what works and they're just throwing money at problems. And that discipline of just kind of spending efficiently. You guys, I remember one of the pieces of advice you gave me when I started on is you guys only spent money on direct response marketing, which you could tell if it had a good or bad return. Walk us through kind of that methodology through the first couple of years of the business.
Yeah, so year one we did $1 million and didn't spend $1 on marketing. But I remember as that year came to a close, I said, I don't know how I'm going to grow this business if we don't figure out other avenues. And you looked at Google and you looked at Facebook and Twitter, and Facebook seemed to be the place that some other brands that you were a little bit more familiar with were putting money. So I basically, took this YouTube course and just forum and learned how to do Facebook marketing. We went from $1 million that first year to $7 million that second year, just because of acquisition and the same principles that applied in acquisition, marketing on Facebook, we applied to Google and other areas, then podcasts, everything else. But it was the early days where, we were very efficient. I think it was $15 to get a person to buy a watch. Not massively scalable, but scalable enough to get $7 million in revenue.
It's beast.
So it was.
And back then there was, that was even more, I feel than in today's world.
Oh yeah. But no one knew. Literally at one point we said, do we make an Instagram or do we make a Twitter? It was because Twitter was around for so long, no one knew. The word influencer did not exist. We said, could we pay this person to post for us? We didn't even know if they'd be interested, who they were.
Because this was back in 2014.
I think it was 2014.
Wow.
So it was just, I think, you needed to kind of use your, use the psychology of where the customer was going, what platform they were using, just based off of us, because we were the customer. 23-year-old kids. So.
That's so rad. I think this is for the Sport of Business podcast, and what I love about Jake's story is he didn't have context to did you have anyone to aspire to, or was it truly just kind of your intuition?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of entrepreneurs that that I looked up to. No one that was doing something in the, call it e-commerce or even fashion world, that I really clicked with or resonated
truly innovative.
with. Yeah,
That's awesome.
it was just tough. It was tough to find. I was looking for it, but even even people who had done it 15 years prior, and it's just they're talking about wholesale and this and that. It's just a different beast.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was hard to find someone that really.
It was funny when I was getting going. Jake was my like piece of context where I was like, I can do it. Your second guy or third guy in the company was my college roommate, and I remember being in San Diego, and Blake was like, was his third employee, was like, I'm moving. Movement's the new way. They're getting going. I'm helping them post Kickstarter. And so I started watching early days of Movement, just keeping my eye on it. And then I, started jobs, and I kept my eye on it. And then one year Blake was like, hey, come to our Christmas party. There's like, I think you only had like 8 or 9 employees at the time. And then there's me. And it was super embarrassing because I went to the Christmas party. We were drinking, having a fun time. And then they send a link out of like photos from the night, and I'm like all over it. I'm like, oh no, I'm in too many photos. They're like, I was devastated the next day. I was like, man, Jake must think I'm like some idiot that's like hijacking his Christmas party.
You were having a good time, dude. It was like everyone's significant other, and then Steven.
Yeah, that was fun. But that gave me a lot of good context. And then another funny story is, you were probably kind of at the peak Movement at this period, and I had just moved to LA to kind of start working on cuts, and we were maybe a $2 million brand at the time. And Jake was like, hey, come out with me to Santa Monica, and we go out, and Jake buys, the tables at the day party, which, was like $5,000 to $6,000 or something. Then we go to lunch, and we brought all these girls back to Rose Cafe, and there was like a group of maybe 10 of us. He buys the whole dinner, drinks, and like people weren't shying the menu, 2, 3, 4 drinks on the night. Then we're like, oh, we're not done. We go to WeHo and go to like, I don't even know what club we went to, but it was some club that cost a lot of money.
It was like Nightingale or something.
Yeah, Nightingale or something like that. And it must have been at least $5,000 to $6,000. Yeah. And I remember I woke up in the morning, I was like, damn, Jake dropped like $15,000. Like, I got to figure out a way to get there. I was 25 or 26 at the time. And I think what I always appreciated with our relationship was like seeing those experiences in the flesh, like made the whole thing real. Because from afar, you're like, oh, I don't know if I could do it. But seeing just like the fruits of what you were able to do, not saying that I was aspired by going to buy bottles and stuff, even though I like doing that sometimes. But it gave me a reference point. Like this guy, he's just like me, and I can do it. And then I just started asking you a bunch of questions, showing up to your office, and I think, unlike most people, I had such a good context of business. I knew, hey, Facebook, you could spend on Facebook, you could spend on influencers. Here's the math that needs to make sense to run a business. And that was, kind of what pioneered Cuts and gave us the confidence to say, hey, we can do this too.
Yeah. So, I think, I mean, in terms of the spending money and all that stuff, it's just, I think what me and you both value is experiences more than anything. And
totally.
At 26 years old, I think that might have even been my birthday, dude, to be honest. But I think at 26 years old,
I think it was your birthday, so it wasn't just an average day. He wasn't doing that on an average Sunday.
But we like, that was what we, at that point in our life, or my life, that's what we did for fun, right? It was like LA, you go out, day drink, whatever, like friends, people. And yeah, 26 years old, to be able to give people an experience like that, it, like, to see other people happy, enjoying themselves, really is like what I enjoyed about that. So I think that was like, I guess, just to wrap that up. And then I think just to talk about like, you and I think the one thing that I take away from this, just even watching Cuts and you progress, is like, number one, you're never afraid to ask questions, like, and like just the consistency of it, which is like, I think it's a rare trait for entrepreneurs. Some people are like timid, like you're just not afraid to ask questions, and like, and I think I was that way to a degree, differently, but like you just have to be willing to not get in people's faces, but like, don't be afraid to ask questions, because like it could be something that like changes the trajectory of your business or your decisions or your way of thinking. And I think my most fond memory of just, which was like, I think you sent me the product, and at the time, like I was a little out of shape, so like Cuts wasn't as much like for what I was maybe wearing on a day-to-day basis, but also it was a newer brand. Like I think you're still working things out, and the packaging was like pretty premium, and but I don't think you were like making money, and you were struggling at one point.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing is like, again, you're I don't know the right word, maybe persistency, and willingness just to continue to iterate and get through those times and grind, just grind it out. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs just don't have that willingness or ability to be in like that dark place where things aren't working and just get out of that. And I think like there's ups and downs all the time, but in the beginning, like more than ever, it's a struggle. And I think just to see where you guys are at today, like, you know, that flashback of like the struggle that you guys were in then to then get through it and to be where you are today, just says so much about, I think, you know, your intuition as an entrepreneur and yeah, where this business is going. So
appreciate it. What Jake has mentioned, we did 180K in our first year, and then we like pretty much no advertising, just word of mouth, Kickstarter. And then between the next year, we were fighting, and I remember I called Jake and I was like, man, Facebook ads aren't working, and this is going to be dicey. This is kind of the whole plan. And I remember your calming voice, and you just said, keep spending. And I remember I coined this term. I was like, we just got to have blind faith, I guess. And we stopped spending for a little bit, worked on our website, and then kind of relaunched in August. And then from that moment on, it was just like we kind of figured out the formula, so to speak. And then we were able to always like be profitable on our first order and kind of keep we had true momentum from that. But we launched September of 2016. From September of 2016 to August of 2017, we could have easily just given up because our factory pretty much like sent us way less units of what they promised. Then we had to onboard a new factory. Facebook wasn't working. You know, I was living at home. I was, you know, behind 40K on a payment essentially. And if August, very well, like I didn't really see it at the time, but if that month we didn't start selling and making money, like we would have eventually ran out of money and it would have been really hard.
Yeah. And I think going back just to your intuition, like your ability to get through, it's test and learn, and test and learn fast in the early days.
Totally.
And yeah, I remember being on the phone with you, looking at the product, and the product was great, the packaging was great, but like something wasn't working. And to get through that time period and figure it out is like, it's just something, what call it blind faith or willingness to like just throw different things at the wall and try and innovate and just understanding where to spend your time. I think that's
totally.
I think me and you probably talk about this a lot offline, but like when we see other founders out there, it's like, it's not in the early days, it's not always like the flashy cool thing you do. It's just it's getting the product, bringing value to the customer, getting them to really love and fall in love with the product. And I think that was your focus the entire time. So
and I think where Jake has been huge is intrinsically, I think a lot of founders don't have this trait, and I can see them, to your point, where they don't intrinsically know value. So they may they may be doing a podcast when we have no revenue and sale and think that's going to drive them revenue when they should be behind closed doors, not in front of a mic, just grinding. And I think so many it's weird because some founders have it and some founders can learn it, but you know there's also founders that just they don't have that self-awareness to kind of understand value, and then you know they get all this talk about it, especially in today's world, but never end up making anything out of it.
Yeah, 100%.
It's funny. We'll text each other, and I'll be like, "This guy is all cap." Or we have a other buddy that owns a sauce company, and we have a text thread, and you can just see it on Instagram. Like you don't even need to talk to him. You can be like, "This guy's cap."
Yeah, we don't need to know him, and it's just based off of the at what stage they're in their business, what year, and like
what they're spending their time in,
and what they're doing. You're just kind of like, okay, that looks cool, but will they be around, or will this end well? I think there's just a lot of ego involved in like a lot of these, in anything, but like founders that find success, raise money, whatever it is. It's like it's easy to just run with the flashy thing, but
totally. This has been good. Let's keep rolling.
Yeah.
What was it like as you started to scale? Because we talk about business as a sport. Was there a time when you like who was your enemy back in the day? Because, you know, sports, there's a winner and a loser. You guys obviously won. You had an exit. What was your, like, enemy, and did that enemy actually drive you to more success, or kind of walk me through, like, the competition that you guys had in the early days?
I think our enemy really felt like Daniel Wellington, to be honest. They were like another big, massive watch brand. You know, at our peak, I think it was somewhere around 80-ish million, and they were like 250 or 300. I mean, we never really knew, but just from what we heard, the difference was it was the same quality watch, but like twice as expensive because they chose to go wholesale and distributors worldwide, and like they had a $70 million business in China and like all this stuff. So Tmall, all that crazy stuff. And I think, so they were like, we were, I don't want to say it, we weren't chasing them from like really anything from a marketing or a brand or product perspective, but we chased them from a, how do we figure out how to do distribution and offline and, and I think it motivated us. I think part of it but honestly, like, I can't remember the quote off the top of my head. It's like, if you're copying someone, sometimes in any way, like you're always going to be one step behind. So, in hindsight, like we innovated and did different things than they did, but I probably would have liked to not think about them as much as we did. Because I think especially with COVID and, distribution, everything, I don't really hear about them at all anymore.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's going on, but, so yeah, I don't know. But it made us like competitive. I think it made us feel that like, you don't want, I've had other like my first business, very, very, very small business, but I got put out of business by a guy who went on Shark Tank and crushed it. And he was like a crazy, really successful entrepreneur. So I felt that before. So that was always the fear of like not executing or taking things for granted. And there's been a bunch of other watch brands that like kind of were, at one point people were like, oh, they might be a competitor, and they're gone now because I think they just didn't stay dialed and focused. So
yeah, it's such a good point of knowing who you are and staying focused. Like our mission and the mission of this podcast is to inspire people to compete and win in the sport of business. And, we see a lot of people say, hey, Steven, are you going to do gym shorts or athletic apparel? And even though we're rooted in that history, the vision of Cuts is clothing for the sport of business and how business is portrayed in modern life, which is opportunities like this where you want to be comfortable, but you want to be professional. So athletic apparel is actually like our enemy because people in athleisure as a category at large is our enemy. And that's what we're trying to convince people isn't formal enough for work, but hey, wear Cuts because it's going to be comfortable and professional. So we really, part of this podcast is really establishing that mission, but something that I think when you're in competition, knowing who you are is so key, because if you go try to beat someone that's better at their game, they're going to squash you, versus kind of staying in your lane and owning and winning that is how you're ultimately going to rise above X, Y, or Z. So I love that.
Yeah, no, I can't agree more. I think that was good. Well said.
What was it like going through like selling a business and kind of doing all of that?
Yeah. It's extremely stressful because there's just so much on the line, right? You're trying to build this business. You have a vision for where you want to take it, and then there's an opportunity to sell the business, and that's not an overnight thing. We did it pretty fast. I think we probably started talking to Movado within 70 to 80 days later, like the business was sold. But there's like within that period, we're flying to New York and New Jersey, and they're coming to us, and we're having, hours of phone calls. Every week, like it was tough. You kind of you almost stop running the business a little. It's hard to do both, and you're pitching and you're talking to them and you're explaining things and you're pulling people out of their roles, or CFO or CMO. So it was a lot, but obviously blessed and grateful that it happened, and got the chance to work with Movado and see that what that side of not just business looks like, but also just see what post acquisition looks like. And I left last June officially, and was a little less involved even before that, but yeah, so now I have no affiliation with it. It's which is interesting because you build something and then you're you see it from the outside looking in, but yeah, I don't know. But
it was a good ride. That was what, 8 years total, maybe 7 years?
My total time there, I think, was 8 years. I think we sold it, launched in 2013, sold it in 2018.
Wow,
so
that's incredible. It was
crazy,
fast.
Yeah.
And that's so crazy. It was an idea. And this is where I think entrepreneurs still to this day don't get enough credit. It was just an idea in Santa Barbara. And 5 years later, millions of watches sold. hundreds of thousands of people employed if you included your manufacturing and your in office. Like that's what drives the economy in the U.S. and entrepreneurs should be protected. And that like all those opportunities that you created through just out of sheer will is really incredible.
Yeah, it's funny. There's even, and not to say like, I think I'm conflicted on how much I believe in like the law of attraction stuff, but at one point I definitely did. And it's funny. There's messages between me and my co-founder Kramer. Like I haven't looked at him in a while, but I know on Facebook we would like be talking before Movement even was, before a watch was designed. We were working on the watch, and but we knew the idea, and we would say things. We would basically be like, we'd look up a brand like Nix and be like, oh, like we could be $100 million business. So just to see like before a watch is even sold to a customer to like what actually ended up coming to fruition is it. It is very serendipitous. But I think as a founder, like,
but you had a vision, like you said it.
Yeah.
People, someone asked me the other day, hey, did you ever think Cuts would be this big? And at first I wanted to give the answer like, no, against my wildest dreams, this would never happen. But like early on, I was like, we're going to be $1 billion brand. I've been saying it for a while. And like I feel like we can do it. And I think like having that dream and the like high expectations is, I mean, you guys obviously had it from day one. But if your expectations aren't high to begin with, then a lot of times like it's not going to push you to kind of get through the next hurdle. Cause it's just, you kind of made it. And it's funny, like I see a lot of brands get so excited over their first million or second million. And it's like, in reality, like anything under $100 million revenue business, in the big scheme of things, if you actually have context, it's not that big of a business, So like kind of, and Cuts is, we're always like, as much as success as we've had, we're still scratching the surface.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a fairly newer thought though, because I think before e-commerce, like with e-commerce and Shopify, anything under $100 million revenue business, it's still like I don't want to say small, but it's like it's a growing business. It's whatever. But like you look at some businesses that we all know and have heard of, and before e-commerce was really big, I mean, it was only wholesale.
True.
But yeah, today it's like you can sell, across the world. People own that customer, all those things. So yeah, I think the expectations are just like you see so many Shopify businesses that are hundreds or now billions of dollars,
which is crazy
in revenue. So
what could you see yourself starting another business?
I could see myself starting another business. Is it going to be in e-commerce? Like, man, I don't think so. Like, you ask yourself, what about the journey did you enjoy? And I struggle with answering like, what about the journey? Like, I know like the people, I think it was going through the ups and downs and like, camaraderie, giving people a sense of purpose, like, having these days where making more money in a day than your wildest dream. We'd have like multi-million-dollar days in Q4 and meeting people and traveling and all these things. But now I'm like, okay, I've done that. Do I want to do that again? Do I want to work as hard? I don't know if there's the passion is like, it's an intrinsic passion for like, I just love this for what it is rather than, what a lot of entrepreneurs I think get to is like, I got to do something bigger because I love when people come up to me and talk to me about what I'm doing. Right. And what I've accomplished is in the past and it's getting less and less relevant. I got to go bigger. That's not me. I think I will start something. I'm investing in a lot of entrepreneur and e-commerce businesses. I will start something at some point, but I have a feeling it's going to be, I know for sure as of now, it won't have anything to do with like trying to get to a certain massive scale of like I don't think I want to go big with it. I think it's like, I'm doing something because I love it. And maybe throughout that process, like I find the passion to build this and help more people or connect with more people. But
that's
now,
really
I don't
cool.
see it,
Yeah, I love that. What let's talk about your investing. What do you look for in a startup founder that's less than $1 million in revenue that you're kind of doing angel in?
Well, first and foremost, I've realized that I need to be a consumer of the product. If I'm not a consumer of the product, then I just don't have the I don't understand like the psychology, the behavior of the customer, because I'm not the customer. When I invest in something, I'm like, I would use this. I love this. I get it. I have just found the ability to like, not to say I've only won in like one of the businesses I've invested in, probably 15 now, but a lot of them are on track to
crush.
Yeah, crush. Like they're doing really well, and I've invested in them at very early stages. So that's probably the biggest thing. And then probably second after that is founder. Like, are the founders hungry when I give them feedback? Are they pushing on it? Are they pushing back on it? Are they receptive? Do they have the drive and ability to like test and learn, and like kind of like if things are going rough, are they going to just be scrappy and figure it out? I think founder comes. Do they have the ability to be the leader and winner?
Yeah, it's all about who they are in the beginning, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then honestly, it's tough, man, because like I feel like when I've asked like different finance people or people I've worked with or even other founders, and it's like, when you get too in the weeds of like the economics of the business early on, like with scale and raising money, like they almost every single time they've figured it out. So I've had so many people push back on like a lot of the businesses I've invested in, and they're all doing multi-million dollars in revenue now. TBD on if they win or not. There's so much that could happen, but I'm happy with pretty like, I'd say like 90% of the things I've invested in, I'm happy still with the progress.
Was there any brand you didn't invest in you wish you would have? That you gave you an opportunity?
That's a good question, man.
You don't need necessarily see.
I'm trying to think. I don't know off the top of my head if there's like one that. I think the only thing I'd say is
I can name one.
Really? Go.
Cuts.
I don't know if you ever asked me, dude. Did you?
At Sweetfin in Playa Vista, it was kind of like an informal ask. It was like early on, right when Sweetfin opened in that Playa Vista area.
To this day, I don't think I've invested in any like fashion. Anything. It scares the fuck out of me, dude. Like, and obviously, and honestly, at the time, I probably wasn't as much.
You weren't as. It was before your exit. You weren't as liquid.
Well, also that, but also I just wasn't a diehard consumer at that point.
Yeah.
I think as I've maybe gotten better shape, but also I sized up too. I was like, that was for me that
the
worked.
Unlock.
I was like, oh, this.
So size up if it's not working for you.
Yeah, it worked perfect. But yeah, dude. I think that was probably Cuts would be one.
But I would say that I have two similar stories with that. Right when I started, my professor, we had just finished our Kickstarter. I was like, all right, I need $100,000 for 10% of the business. He came in and was like, oh, I want 30%. So I was like devastated, and I was like, no, I guess we're not fundraising, and it was the best thing that we ever did. Then when I think we passed like 10 million. That's right around like I had the conversation with you. I was like, man, we just passed 10. Let's do some fundraising. I reached out to a few people, not like a full fundraising, and a couple people said no, and I ended up being like, okay. I talked to Carter, our CFO now, and he was like, let's just keep our head down. And both times, it was the no that was actually the best thing in the world, not necessarily the yes. Yeah. And I always tell that story because, that's been really like now having, more equity in the business for myself and not having like outside partners and having not raised money, I feel like it's really some of our best asset that we have against a lot of other brands. And it's like a ace in the hole that we have when maybe not other brands have the ability to do that. And the value of that equity like has now gone, it's could be worth hundreds of millions of dollars now.
I think that but going back to you as a founder, that's like, call it philosophy or the psychology of even you as a founder. It's like, you have to look, you need good or bad. Like what happens in a moment almost shouldn't be defined as good or bad, right? Like you didn't get money from people or got no's in the moment. That was devastating. It was bad. A lot of things that probably happened in the early days, you could have labeled as bad. Looking at it now, like those were all good things.
Totally.
You learn from them. And like, that's fucking a metaphor for life, dude. Like I think, but some founders just dwell on like, little things that they think are big but aren't, and I think that's just a lesson to remember. Have
a short memory.
Yeah, 100%.
It's just like basketball. Taking shots. Yeah. I have this saying of, getting reps. Like when you get reps in life, like it allows you to get more rhythm. And in business, there's business reps where you need shots.
Yeah. You taught me that one.
Reps. Any funny stories we can go over? I'm trying to think.
Just us, like just.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think, man. I mean, just going back to you, my perception of you, just this guy. I think you had a fedora on too. You were just loving life, just in these pictures, and I don't know. I thought that was hilarious, but I didn't think anything of it. Like, you were Ethan's buddy, but you just kept coming around, which is awesome, and you knew the whole gang. So, I don't know, man. I don't know what stories are like safe for the pod.
Yeah. Our single stories we'll leave out of that. Or my single stories, Jake is still single, but so yeah, Jake, I appreciate you coming on the pod. Is there anything you would want to say? I always try to end these with something you would say to kind of some words of advice to someone starting something or wanting to compete in the sport of business.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think it's first off, just get started, and then don't let. There's ups and downs with it. You just got to keep grinding it out. Find mentors, people that like we talked about in the beginning. Like, reach out to people, get feedback from people, but ultimately, like, you got to get out there and just get your hands dirty and learn as you go. And I think for the people that do end up raising money, it's not always like, just because you have it doesn't mean you should use it, right? Like, like in certain areas. Sometimes, like, if you would have had a lot of money starting off, or even me, we would have spent it in the wrong area.
Totally.
So, like, don't be like, figure out ways to get started, and then just learn and fail as you go. And if you fail, like, just pivot from there. And I think that's why I go back to, I don't know why anyone wouldn't do a crowdfunding campaign, whether it's crowdfunding or raising money. It's like, just get going. So, and I think that.
Just start.
Start. It's just easy. Yeah.
Yeah. We, our first year we made significant EBITDA. We had a bad January and February because we're like, all right, here's all this stuff we can do. We can spend on. And then we had to kind of like reset. And that's so true. Like, sometimes too much money is actually like the thing that distracts you, rather than when you're disciplined and you're going slow. That's when you find the most success. So, Jake, appreciate you coming on the pod. Episode 1 in the books.
Let's go.
Loved it. Thanks again, brother.
Thanks, dude.